people are incentivized to be consumers and not builders. If you realize that you've never learned what money is and there's other people that control this to the benefit of themselves and not you, what else isn't true in the world? If arguably money is the most important technology in the world, right? It's a tool that you use to exchange value with each other. Bitcoin is hope. It actually enables you as a tool, as a technology, however you want to call it, to look forward to the future.
Welcome back to the Orange Peel Podcast. I'm your host, Nikki, and today I am sitting down with Bram Kanstein, who runs Bitcoin for Millennials. He has an awesome show, and he's focused on basically what I'm doing, but for the generation that's above us. He's also one of the clearest voices in Bitcoin and holds the most conviction. He's someone who doesn't just chalk charts or hype. He talks about the truth and the integrity and what money really says about who we are as people. So this episode is going to be all about getting real, getting personal, and getting into how Bitcoin shows you what kind of a person you are. Bram, thanks so much for coming on. I'm so excited to get to know you and have this conversation.
Thanks so much for inviting me, and thanks so much for that beautiful introduction. It's actually funny. I have a guy who I work with, Gary, who's my editor, and we talk a lot about like we have to, you have to play the YouTube game. Like we can try to have interesting conversations, but we also want to kind of like trigger people and reach people. And I see a lot of people, talk about price and hype and all this stuff. And I love that you recognize that that is something that I don't want to do, because I do think that is very short-term focused and eventually also, but maybe that's what we're going to talk about, right? Bitcoin is not a short-term thing. Like Bitcoin is a rest of your life thing, and so I try to, in my own way, to have like certain deeper conversations that I firstly learn from myself, right? And then hopefully we can inspire other people. And so I love that you recognize that, because in a world of like a lot of short term content and ephemeral content, it's pretty difficult to make content that is hopefully evergreen, but that is what I'm attempting. So I'm happy you're seeing through that as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, you do a great job. And I think more on making it long form content. You're making long form content about something that requires long term conviction. And then that's like
Hmm.
twice as hard as
Yeah.
as just, making TikToks and making reels to put out there.
Yeah.
So, props to you for doing that. But let's get started. Why don't you share about, your Bitcoin journey? How did you discover Bitcoin? What got you into it basically?
Yeah. So I discovered it in 2013 when I was a student, and obviously, well, first off, it was a very simple video. It's a real pity that I cannot link to it. It's on Vimeo, but it's like private now. But it was just a basic explainer of what is Bitcoin, or Bitcoin explained, something like that, like an animated video. And I've always been very interested in, the internet, how people are connected, what are people doing on the internet, what are they building, like the products and the apps and stuff like that. So I think I can call myself an early adopter in that sense. That I've tried out thousands of things that people have built, like apps and products and stuff. And so when I came across Bitcoin, I was like, oh, this is actually very cool. Like this could be a money for the internet. And I looked at it like that for quite a while. So I think perhaps like not super technical, but more like a bit technical. Like definitely not the economic or financial angle, basically that I later went through. And so obviously I thought, I can be rich when I buy and trade and do all of that stuff. So that's what I did with like two friends. We day traded for like, I don't know, 3 months or something, and then eventually I just realized I am not a trader. I'm more the study person, and apparently also I found that out later, more like just a longer conviction holder. I want to sit. I don't want to be or at least have the feeling I'm taking risk and being dependent on other people or whatnot. So I just stopped day trading. And I think just over time, I always just studied Bitcoin, followed it. I do have like old tweets from like 2013 that when I say something like Bitcoin is a digital commodity that you can trade 24/7 with everyone in the world, etc. And then I'm like, damn, like I got it. But I didn't get it, right? Because, as you know, this is a multifaceted subject where you can look at it from a technological angle and still not really understand why it exists, for example, right? Like what problem does it solve? And I think that's also why a lot of people get distracted with crypto and then thinking like, oh, I can get rich there. Obviously I was distracted too, so I did all the ICO stuff, all the NFT stuff, while still, you know, studying, owning some Bitcoin. Did sell everything at one point at like, so I always share, like I bought between 100 and 300, but I sold everything at 4,000 and I was very happy, but obviously I didn't understand it. And now I have way less than before. But I think that's also needed, right? Like it is very hard to understand why Bitcoin actually exists. And I think in like 2020 or like 2019, 2020, I really started to dive deep more into like the economical and financial dimensions of Bitcoin, basically, which I think once you grok that money isn't what you thought it was, that you know it can be created infinitely by other people that basically profit from that, right? That you start to understand that you have no clue about money, and eventually understand the problem that you have, and realizing that you had no clue about having that problem before. You were just doing things unconsciously, right? I think that is probably what just pushed me super far down the rabbit hole. Just realizing that I wasn't an actor in the financial system, but rather a subject. That there's other people that have control over that, and that I think is the main thing for me when I realized, okay, that is something that I don't want. Like I want to understand to a certain degree what I'm participating in, and in the fiat financial system I couldn't find that, right? So I've shared this a lot, so people that listen to me know this, but like when I was 30, I worked at a bank. I had a mortgage. I was already into Bitcoin, and then I had a colleague tell me, you know, did you know that the money in the bank is not yours? And I was like, what are you talking about? And then we had lunch, and like for an hour he explained to me how banking works, fractional reserve banking, right? That you know, when people create when a loan is created, the money is also created. That the banks only have to hold like 1 or 0% of all the deposits, right? And that the number in your banking app doesn't really represent anything. Basically, it's a number in a database that is controlled by an outsourced party, you know. And it's all these things. And I realized I walked away from that lunch just really feeling like an idiot, like really being like, okay, what am I doing? You know, I'm doing all these things and I'm thinking that I'm consciously doing all these things, but then I realized that I wasn't. And I think that was a big trigger point for me to dive way deeper and like I said, dive into the economic and financial dimensions of Bitcoin. And that really showed me why this exists. And that is eventually basically also when I just realized, okay, I need to move everything I own that I want to save into, you know, from a system that I don't understand, that is obfuscated on purpose, to this ultimately transparent system that anyone can verify for themselves. And I know you know you want to talk about this idea of like Bitcoin is a mirror. Like this was my first realization of that mirror, right? You have this one system on the one side that you will never truly understand, right? Like the Federal Reserve in America has never been audited. And then on this other side, you have a money system, a digital money system that's audited every 10 minutes. And there's a consensus every 10 minutes by a decentralized network all over the world that is secured by the most powerful computer network in the world. And yeah, when I put those things next to each other, I was like, no, I want to move to this other thing, because up until a certain point, I have way more certainty about what this is. I can actually control my wealth, right? I can have that in my self custody, etc. And it's not like there is a zero risk. Like everything you do in life has risk, but understanding that I could actually understand this thing way more, and that I didn't have to outsource a lot of things that I outsourced before. You know, having money in a fiat money system, that actually made me, I think, move all in. And then, like you mentioned about the podcast, like 2 years ago, just now 2 years, I just realized that this is something I'm going to think about for the rest of my life. And so I wanted to contribute to that. I think similar to you, and yeah, that's why I thought, why not another podcast? So I think that's a short
Yeah,
intro.
man. I mean, that's awesome. And you know what? You're like living example of what just having conviction and having belief can do. But what I found interesting is you're one of the first people that I've met that discovered Bitcoin before they discovered what the problem was. So it's like you found out what the solution was before you actually went to do research about the problem. And it's crazy that you went in with like the technical side as well, because that's how I learned about Bitcoin. You know, when I was 16 in high school, I wrote a paper and I wrote a little bit on, the hash function. I wrote on the blockchain and how that technology works. The block time of 10 minutes. So all of this stuff I wrote about the RSA encryption, elliptical curve, all of this. So I was so interested. And then it wasn't until kind of like you said, I started learning things. I started noticing. I came to college and I saw the price of things go up and our purchasing power being eroded every single year, right? Like my rent, I've been in college for about 2 years and my rent has gone up 3 times already. So,
Really?
I mean,
Wow.
it's
Yeah.
crazy. It's not
Yeah,
normal,
that's
right?
wild.
So,
And did the room get bigger or more fancy,
no,
or like did it? No, exactly. Right.
if
Yeah.
anything, I feel like the room is kind of eroding away, right? Like now my window's broken, it doesn't open,
Hmm.
and the AC's got its own problems.
Yeah.
So it's like all these little things, and then I looked into what's the problem with Joe Bryan, and they saw, oh my gosh, inflation's a real thing, and that money printer really doesn't stop, right? Fractional reserve banking, as you said, it's just learning that the money that was in the bank isn't really yours. I think that's such a huge revelation that we come to as people learning about Bitcoin. But I want to go a little bit, more personal with Bitcoin. So, when you started learning, when you started getting deeper and deeper, did you notice something about Bitcoin that kind of shocked you? Maybe it was a belief or a habit that you didn't, believe in or understand at first?
I think it was mainly about being unconsciously aware or capable with regard to what I was doing financially, right? So not understanding that you don't understand what you're doing, but you're still doing it, right? A lot of people, I think, go through life in general like that, but yeah, once you realize, and those are, and there are very simple things, right? Like I think if I had to retrace my whole journey, it would be very hard to kind of like put it together how I put it together, basically. But there's little things like you said, like inflation is real. It's so basic, right? Like because when you say that, and then some people could say like, yeah, of course it's real, they talk about it on TV or whatever, but like, do you understand what it is, right? Like I had basic economics in high school, and we talked about inflation, but it's like, yeah, that's a thing that happens, and that was basically it, right? And there's boom and bust, etc., and then they adjust the rates to kind of like mitigate that. And just when you hear that, you don't really think about it. But then when you start thinking about it, and you, for example, realize, okay, if there's a X amount, there's 100,000, to make the example easy, there's 100,000 money units that can be used in an economy for an X amount of products and services. And I got this eventually from Lynn Alden, who puts this on a scale, right? So when they're even, the money basically it just goes like the money pays for products and services. The person who gets that as a reward spends it again, etc. But if you create more units, this becomes heavier, the prices go up, right? And so even the definition of inflation that you learned is wrong, right? Because they talk about price inflation, but price inflation is a consequence of the money supply inflation, making more units. And just that little thing, I think if you really sit and think about that with the understanding that the money system that we have can only survive when you create more units, there's no other conclusion that you can have that prices will go up forever. And then you could be like, okay, well, but if my wage goes up, or I have to demonstrate for my wage, or whatever, like people are still in a certain construct when they think about it. But if you just try to step out of that, which is not easy, And just think about that mechanism. Okay, so but then okay, who creates these units? Okay, central bank, commercial banks. Okay, and so are there any people that can spend these units before the prices go up? Well, yes, there are other people that can spend these units before the prices go up, right? Oh, who are these people? Well, mainly it's very rich people with a lot of assets that can borrow, right? But it's also your government. Okay, so it's your government. Like who is in the government? Yeah, it's just other people. Well, are these other people better than me? Do they deserve to use a money that has more value than when I get it lower down the ladder? Well, and then you can kind of start seeing that there's these little decision points, I would say, right? It is a yes or a no. And I kind of summarize it as, does this bother you? If yes, continue. If no, well, have fun staying for it now. But like it is these all these little steps along the way where you have to think about, okay, what do I actually think about this? What do I feel about this? And when I realized, okay, there's other people that have a certain control over this money system, and these other people are not necessarily better than me, right? That will be my assumption. They're not better, smarter, or whatever. They're in a certain position where they have an advantage over me in this money system. Is that something that makes me a subject and not an actor, right? Like I mentioned. So do I want to be a subject in this monetary system? Well, if you think, well, no, I cannot really change anything about it. So whatever, like in the Matrix movie, that is the blue pill. Like, okay, I know that this is going on, but I'm going to ignore it. And then I'm just going to live the rest of my life with this knowledge. And basically, I'm going to act against my self-interest because I think that I cannot really do anything about it. But the cool part with Bitcoin existing, again, this mirror, right? If you think, okay, but there is something that exists that could be a resistance to this super predatory system where you are a subject, and you can actually switch to a money system where you can be an actor. Okay, is that something I would be interested in? And then you can again say yes or no, right? And so I think it's all these little steps that eventually get you to a point where you cannot unsee this fiat money system, and you cannot unsee the possible, I have to say, solution that could be Bitcoin. And so I kind of drifted away from the question, but my point is more like it is all these little steps. There's not at one point like one big thing. I think that eventually comes when you have all these little steps, but it starts with these little steps, just questioning, just trying to understand the predicament you're in and slowly seeing it. Like even the people that now say like, oh, when the prices in the supermarket go up, it's the billionaires, it's these, companies, whatever, but they're all playing the game and the game is rigged. Right, the game is rigged, and people just follow their incentives that they have in whatever the position that they have. So you cannot really blame them, but they do keep this rigged game alive because they're playing the game, right? And so I think kind of like one of the final steps before you really adopt Bitcoin is, okay, do I want to keep playing this game, or do I want to go into, for the sake of the argument, another game, right? And I think when I realized that I can just move, and that move gave me so much mental freedom because I knew that I made the move consciously. I knew what I was getting into. I knew that there's an infinite amount of information that I can still consume to grow my understanding and therefore my conviction, right? I think when people say conviction, it is very important to add to that. Like, it's not because person A, B, influencer, whatever, said, you got to get into Bitcoin. No, my conviction comes from my study and my understanding and my reflection, right? And my due diligence of not only what other people say, but also what the conclusion is that I ended up with, right? And so it's a very, very long answer, but it's tiny steps until you're like, I cannot unsee this. And for everyone, that I cannot unsee this moment is different, I would say. Right. And so it depends on how much you experience the problem. I didn't really experience the problem when I discovered it. Other people do experience the problem when they discover it or start using it, right? People fleeing from war zones or whatever. So people come at it from all these different angles, and they have certain steps to go through before they're like, oh my God, I can actually do this. Like, I can actually move in it. And therefore it is also a peaceful resistance in that sense, because when you move the money, which is an abstraction of energy, I don't know, you probably talked about this before, right? But if you can just take energy away from a system and put the energy in another system, this one system gets less strong and other system gets stronger. Like that's very basic, right? But yeah, that's just kind of how I see it. So it's like little steps, and then you have like a big revelation, and you're like, okay, this is my new base layer understanding. And then you have little steps again, and there's this another thing. And yeah, I mean, yeah, I've been thinking about this for like 12 years now, and it doesn't really stop. So it is also not easy, right? That's what I would add. It is hard, because every day now, maybe also for you, if I can ask you a question, like you're into this and your friends know you're into this, and some people might say like, oh, I saw this is a scam, or I saw this is a Ponzi, or no, buy Ripple or whatever. You're constantly challenged to trust yourself every day. You have to be like, no, I'm not a criminal, I'm not in a Ponzi, I'm not in a this and a that. No, I just made a conscious decision to adopt or better money, as millions of people have done before me in history, by the way, right? This has happened before. People are always looking for a better money. And the money that we have today, the fiat money, is a 50-year-old or 70-year-old experiment. So it is not the best money that we collectively came up with. No, in fact, it is a predatory system that extracts value from you as an individual, right? And that, I think, is how I kind of like have thought through it. So having a certain revelation or a certain level of understanding, and then be like, okay, has this happened before? Yeah, that infinite content has been written about people messing up the money, choosing a better money. And I mean, it's still happening today, right? In the border region of Canada and the US, when you're in Canada, you can pay with Canadian dollars in a store, or with American dollars in a store, and they give you Canadian dollars in return. They know that that is a good way for them to exchange uh, uh, a money for a better money. So people do that all the time. Like that is nothing new. It's not like yeah, we just came up with that or whatever. And so these little things have helped me to grow my conviction, in the sense that yeah, some historical stuff just makes sense, and that's what I adopt. And then yeah, you kind of get to the next stepping stone of study and understanding. Yeah. So I don't know if that was an answer to the question actually. Yeah.
No, that's so interesting. That's a really good point because I find it really cool that you framed it as a lot of small steps until kind of a big realization, and then another series, and the process just keeps repeating and repeating. Because I think that's a lot of the reason why people resist Bitcoin because it's very daunting at first. There's a lot to learn. It's foreign. It's unlike anything we've ever seen before. And the thing about Bitcoin is it lives in between the realm of economics and computer science, right? These aren't fields that are easy to learn about if you're not interested or studying them or if you don't have the resources. So this idea of it needing to be a prolonged process, a prolonged series of learning and answering and asking questions, it puts you out of your comfort zone. It puts you into discomfort, right? You look at your all of the little things you do. So maybe the impulse that you have to spend, to compare, to want things even faster, to want instant gratification. It's uncomfortable. And what I wanted to ask you is, do you think that it's almost inevitable to have discomfort as you're learning about Bitcoin, almost like it forces you to confront the truth about the world and about how you view money before you really can understand it?
Probably the best question someone has ever asked me. Yes, yes, and that is also why I think it's a very spiritual thing. Exactly what you're saying, right? Like even okay, go back. Okay, so there's other people that can create this money infinitely, and I have to spend my finite time and energy to earn these units. Just that. Are you okay with that? If if you're okay with that, you have to live with that information, with that knowledge. Well, that gives you a certain spiritual challenge, I would say, right? Or could give you a certain anxiety, just realizing, okay, there's these other people that have control over me. Okay, that's pretty effed up. If I'm not okay with it, okay, then what do I do? Like I instantly have a problem, right? Which also gives you a certain amount of anxiety because, okay, I cannot deny that I have a problem. I cannot deny that I'm not okay with it. Okay, so what do I do now? Like you have to get to work, right? And I think the work part is trying to understand the predicament that you're in, the problem that you have, and like you said, along the way you will figure out that you never had a clue what money was, right? Especially, I always share, like in a Western country, yeah, when you were younger, you got some coins or bills from one of your parents, and they were like, "Yeah, go to the store. You give this thing, and then you get a lollipop or a bread in return." Like, okay, that apparently that's money, right? Like, you never ever really learned about it. I had a guy on a podcast who has a double master's in economics, and he said, "I never learned what money is." So how does a random person, philosophically, right? So he was calculating with units, but like, what is money? Why does money exist? Where does it come from? What are good properties of money? Like all those things. And it is really hard for a general person to figure that out, especially like you said. That's why I love the question, because it's so uncomfortable. I mean, I was 30 when I realized I was doing all these things and I had no clue, which I'm happy that it was still like somewhat on time. I'm even happier for you that you are even before that, right? Because I think it really empowers you eventually. But yeah, you need that resistance, that feeling of, ooh, I don't really want to know this, right? And I think that over time I learned that is exactly when you have to move, right? That is a signal that there's something to learn and that you should move and do the work, because on the other side of that is a certain, how do you say, I don't know, reward, surprise, whatever, like something new that you now know that you can use to, yeah, go to the next stepping stone. Basically, I think this is, again, especially in the Western world, what keeps a lot of people away from Bitcoin is, yeah, okay, if you realize that you've never learned what money is and there's other people that control this to the benefit of themselves and not you, what else isn't true in the world? If arguably money is the most important technology in the world, right? It's a tool that you use to exchange value with each other. Whatever we deem as value, if I offer something and you want it, I think something has value. That's my value proposition, right? And you have a certain perceivement of that value, and then you and I agree to shake hands and have a value exchange, right? And that is free in a sense, right? There's a free market. I can make any company, I can make any product, I can offer anything to the world. And if there's no people that want it, then it's there is no value, basically. So that does exist in the world. But when we shake hands, and you and I, I offer something for 1,000, you say no, I want to buy it for $800 units, whatever money units, and I say no, 900, and you say okay, and we shake hands. That was total freedom, right? But then the thing we use as the tool to reward me is controlled by a third party that controls the value of the units that we use, right? So although you and I agreed 900 units, the 900 units you give me today are already worth slightly, very, very tiny, less than today. And when you start to understand that, then you start to understand that, okay, if I'm spending my finite time and energy that's gone forever to create something of value that you luckily also see as valuable, well, we can do business, basically. And my goal is to collect units of a money to create a pile of money, right? Which they call capital, that I can then eventually spend on other people's time and energy that do things for me in whatever way, right? So um, I had a podcast that I listened to years ago that was about energy, totally not Bitcoin related. But there was this guy who said, if you look around you, everything that you see costs energy to create or maintain, right? So even the wooden cabinet came from a tree that had energy from the sun and the rain and whatever. Then there was a guy or a machine or whatever, that cut it down, was transported, made into this thing. So it's basically all condensed in this, for example, end product. So if you see a value exchange basically as an energy exchange, but on one side it is finite energy, my energy and time is gone when I create my product or service, right? My value proposition. And the thing that I get in return actually is an abstract of that, right? It should be the same. But if the thing I get loses value on purpose over time, because this is the design of the system that we are also, by the way, forced to use, right? You were born in a certain country, you are forced to use this money. You can come with your money to my country, but then people wouldn't accept it, for example, right? So that also doesn't really make sense, because then the time and energy of people on different parts of the world, if they do the exact same thing, is valued differently based on the strength of the money in the country. But that's a sidestep. But I also find that weird. So I have that. And if I want to save it to build something, right? So if I want to build something, I have to save certain amount of capital to create one time and space to try something, right? If I want to build, I can also fail. So I need to create time and space to at least have that to fail. I want to succeed, but if I fail, I want to be okay. Does that make sense? Like that is why you have some money. Like if you want to make a big crazy building or even art or make a music album or whatever, you need time and space to try to create, right? But if the capital that I gather, all the units that I gather lose value every day, then I'm not really incentivized to wait to gather more units to then start creating, because even in the time that I'm creating, the value, the money is losing value, right? The units that I gathered. So rather than creating and building, I'm incentivized to spend it, right? I had a guest on the show, Seth Bunny, who told me all the money you have today is worth the most today. And that is insane if you think about it. Even when it's just a little bit less tomorrow, it is slowly eroding and eroding. So that free will, if you want to call it that, right? That we had when we made the exchange, that kind of goes away after I receive the reward, because by some way I'm incentivized to spend it uh, today. And that is also why I eventually think that it is more like a spiritual thing. I'm People are incentivized to be consumers and not builders, and therefore also like all the quality of everything that's built, which has to be built fast, right, and super effectively, whatever that means, um, also means the quality goes down. If that makes sense, right? And you can see that when you it's another example I used like a few months ago. I was in Antwerp. I was standing in front of a building from 1533 or whatever. And then I was thinking like, what has been built in my lifetime that I know that's going to stand somewhere for 500 years, anywhere in the world? You know, you could think that 500 years later, we would be way better at creating even better buildings, for example, right? That maybe would stand for 5,000 years, right? But that is not the case. And I think once you kind of start seeing that money, the quality of the money is an incentive for whatever you do with it after you have received it, if that makes sense. And so if you have money that constantly loses value, you are incentivized to spend it all the time. And you have modern day economists that say that is the whole point of our money, right? And they are right to a certain degree. But the other thing is that, okay, if I'm incentivized to spend, who's building? Like, how does then you can easily argue that the quality of everything that's being built goes down over time. Whereas if I have a money that, let's say, stays stable or perhaps even appreciates, right? But let's say it stays stable, then I actually have way more opportunity as the person who's collecting the capital to consciously think about, what do I want to do? What do I want to spend it on? And that, I think, is something that eventually gives you way more, at least the feeling of a certain type of autonomy or sovereignty over your choices, instead of being, let's call it, motivated by an outside source to just be a mindless consumer. Does that make sense? Like, and that again is a mirror, right? So the one invites you to spend, and the other invites you to build. And eventually I think people are builders and thinkers and want to create, right? And also want to create something that hopefully has a lasting impact. Like all these older buildings, there have been people that worked on these buildings and they died before they were even finished, right? They worked on something and found value in that, and they never even saw their end product, but they were okay with that because there was still a certain pride or feeling of achievement or whatever. And like nowadays, that isn't really there. And I think that is what a lot of people don't understand, that the whole anxiety about the future, especially with my generation, but I think even more with your generation, right? Like all the gambling or the OnlyFans or the crypto stuff or whatever, like it's just mindless spending, but no one is really creating. And I think that is a pity, because eventually, and you will also experience that when you have 1,000 episodes and a super big podcast, like that is the most rewarding thing. Like creating value for other people is, I would say, the best thing that you can do. And this is what a lot of people don't see. But again, it's not easy. I think that is hard. And so in Bitcoin, we say, everything is downstream from the money. I think the full sentence should be, everything is downstream from the quality of the money, right? And the faster the money loses its value, the more you are incentivized to be a consumer and follow that incentive. It's an incentive to spend it, right? And on the other side, the people that create products and services, aren't, including the government, are not incentivized to create value. So we're kind of like blinding ourselves in this downward spiral. And so the anxiety of people grows and grows and grows, especially towards the future. So if you think about the future and you think like, well, the money's not going to be worth anything, I'm just going to party today and spend it today and whatever, um, then yeah, I don't think it is surprise that people, for example, are not having kids or cannot find a home and stuff like that. So yeah.
It's so interesting that you just connected, the quality of our money to things like the rise in gambling and OF and all these NFTs and meme coins. Because I never really connected that in my head, but hearing you talk about it, it's like, wow, everything is really downstream of the quality of the money. So, I mean, that's just insane. And I guess on that note, then, Gen Z is coming of age, and to an extent millennials as well, but we're coming of age at a time where we don't know what the world is going to look like in 5, 10 years. And a lot of us are graduating college, are entering college with degrees that are meant for jobs that might not even exist a few years in the future, right? With the rise of AI. For example, I'm studying computer science, so I always thought it was going to be software engineering, writing code. I might not even have that job in when I graduate, and I graduate like in a year-ish. So it's a very uncertain time. And Gen Z has a lot of financial nihilism. We have a lot of, I want to say, lack of hope when looking in the future. And I think, as you were saying, that really does contribute to the rise in Gen Z gambling their money away, going out drinking and partying and just spending. I mean, you might not believe this, but when I tell you that most of my friends, they have a very, very small amount in their savings account. They don't see the point in saving at all because they're like, oh, I'll just spend it. I mean, I'm never going to be in a situation where I need to save. So it's unlike any other generation that we've seen before. So what I want to ask you is, how can Gen Z start to see Bitcoin as kind of like a glimpse of hope for the future?
Yeah, I looked up a tweet that I sent last week. I said, sharing the understanding as to why someone needs Bitcoin is our greatest barrier, right? So I'm happy you started a podcast. Why does someone want to gamble on shitcoins or stonks, right? Because their future outlook is nihilistic anyway, right? So they don't, that's kind of what I tried to say just now. Like that is what people have. And I said, yeah, Bitcoin is hope. And it's a great question. Again, I think I got this from Saif Dino Moose, who talks about time preference. So he talks about low and high time preference. When you think about, okay, my life is finite by definition. And so you could go the whole spiritual conversation and be like, well, because it's finite, right? Death implies life. So you have to live life, etc. Right? Perhaps it becomes a bit too spiritual or esoteric for this conversation. But if you want to, we can go there, right? But I think that is one. But I think that's what we lose. That would be very basic, right? The fact that you are going to die, everyone's going to die, should incentivize you, right, to live today, because you never know if you're going to die tomorrow, right? Like that is quite basic, I would say. But I think people are drawn away from that because, okay, so there is this uncertainty about the future by definition. I don't know when I'm going to die. So there is a certain level of uncertainty or anxiety, however you want to call it. And some people feel that more than others, right? Like some people are afraid to die, some people don't, and totally are there in their mind or their spirit with the death consequence being the motivator to live life. Does that make sense? So that is just in general, right? So everyone has that. So everyone is uncertain about the future. But if there is then a technology like I just mentioned, right, that should be a representation of spending being the reward for spending our finite time and energy. If again that reward is slowly eroding in value, so basically your time and energy is taken away from you, right? Because when I spend my time and energy before I get your reward, then it's already gone. You give me the reward, and that should stay the same again. But if that erodes in value, it actually heightens my uncertainty towards the future, because whatever I'm trying to save it for, whatever I want to do in my future to perhaps also lower my uncertainty towards the future, right? So get a job or make a venture or do a study or start a family or whatever I want to create, right? right? Which is personal for everyone. So it's not really about what you want to do, but if you want to lower the uncertainty towards your future, you have to consciously start doing certain things. Does that make sense? So in order to do those things, you need this capital, you need this pile of money, however much you think you need. But if that is slowly eroding over time, it heightens your uncertainty towards the future. So there is a man-made structure that heightens your uncertainty towards the future. Whereas conceptually, the goal should be, if when I gather capital, again, however much I think I need, that should actually lower my uncertainty towards the future. So where there's this man-made technology that actually heightens my uncertainty towards the future, which is less hope, right? So I have a high time preference. I want to focus on the now, not in the mindfulness way, focus on the now, right? But I'm distracted from the future. Perhaps call it like that, right? There is a future that is coming towards me, but I'm not really thinking about that because I have to spend all the money I have today, basically, right? Again, this consumer thing. So you can see this kind of intertwined, right? But that does something with your brain, because how do you look at the future if you're not even looking at the future, right? And then if someone comes along who talks about, well, yeah, I'm studying computer science, or I have debt, or what, I'm studying XYZ, and I don't think that job's going to exist anymore. Holy fuck. Why did I spend 4 years studying this for something that doesn't exist anymore? Oh my God, more anxiety, right? And so I think the fact that the money erodes and you constantly have anxiety building actually makes you more susceptible to more anxiety about the future, if that makes sense. And so why is Bitcoin hope? I think the translation of hope here would be, instead of having a nihilistic outlook towards the future with this with more than a natural amount of anxiety that everyone would have, you embrace the future or have a positive outlook towards the future, including the natural anxiety that is there, right? Because you could also say, well, if I want to build a family, or I want to move somewhere, like that is something I really want, right? Like that's my desire. When you then think about, oh, but what if I die before I get there? That would also give you a certain anxiety, right? So the anxiety is there anyway. But again, it is about how much do you, or are you able to control it? And when we think about the quality of the money, when you have fiat money, it heightens the anxiety. So again, there's this external factor that brings that in. And then why is Bitcoin hope? I think Bitcoin is hope because it is a money that cannot be debased, right? The whole point, I think the core characteristic of Bitcoin is the absolute uh, supply cap, again, that anyone can verify, by the way, right? And that is the goal. The goal is, okay, I have this amount of money, 21 million units, and I have an amount of products and services. There can never be more than this. Actually, some people lose it, right? And there's less. So you could say like, okay, this becomes lighter and this becomes heavier. And then you can see, to get back to here, people need to innovate. People have to make more products and services to have the same amount of to attempt to get the same amount of money, right? The products and services are in a market and they compete with each other. And so you can see that here it's the other way around. It's like, okay, there's a finite thing and this would fluctuate, but it should always go to at least the equilibrium or more. Like, it incentivizes competition. If the money is scarce, you actually have to deliver value. Does that make sense? Like, you cannot just bullshit your way out of it, basically, with I don't know, like a bad quality product or whatever. Like, you have to work for it. And so because there's a finite amount of of Bitcoin, and that's the other meme, right? One Bitcoin is one Bitcoin. It is always the same. This is the goal of this whole money system, per my understanding, is the whole promise is, this is my rule system. This is my protocol for this money system. And my promise or my goal is to always stay the same. If it stays the same and over time more, not only value is stored, but also more transactions, data are stored, right? It lives longer, the security goes up. That actually makes it more predictable and reliable, instead of, again, the mirror to the fiat money system that loses value every day, that's very unreliable. People wait every month, for example, in America, to see Jerome Powell to tell you how much the money is worth right now, right? So again, there's this difference. And so if you adopt a money that is a stable, predictable system, right? It's fully transparent, all the rules, etc. Anyone can verify that for themselves. You can run a node, you can look at the code, you can look at the white paper, everything. It's fully transparent. That actually, when you adopt it as your money, because it's so predictable, it doesn't increase this natural anxiety, if that makes sense. And so yesterday I posted a picture by Gen 3 that shows like you have this inverse pyramid with all the money units in the world. Let's say all the dollar units in the world, right? Like the whole world's like 700, 900 trillion. And then at the bottom is this little orange triangle, which is then Bitcoin. And all this money in the world now represents, all the products and services, all the value in the world. But that green triangle is constantly growing bigger. There's more money units, right? So that's why the home prices go up. It's not because, your room is going, your dorm is going up, not because the dorm got an upgrade. It's because the units you use to pay it lose value, and because more are created. And so when people realize, hey, there's this thing that cannot be debased, that no one is an owner of, which is apolitical, a-religious. I can send it to anyone in the world without any intermediary, right? And there's this system, the rules in this money system, of which the incentive is that everyone follows the rules and that the rules are protected. Okay, that gives a pretty stable outlook towards the future. And once more people realize that and start moving more value in Bitcoin, the value of each Bitcoin will go up. So you are incentivized to actually save. You are incentivized to actually create this time and space to do whatever you think you want to do, as in building. And so it actually gives you a tool that, if when you think about something you want to build in the future, it shuts down or mitigates the anxiety that is created because you want to create something in the future. Does that make sense? So that is why I would say this is why people say Bitcoin is hope. It actually enables you as a tool, as a technology, however you want to call it, to look forward to the future, although you might do something that is risky or new or unknown or whatever. That doesn't really matter, because that's the whole goal of life, right? You do something towards, if I want to do something, or I want to have something I don't have, or I want to create something I've never created, I instantly have a problem. I have to do things, and then when I do things, I create more problems, right? But if you know that you have the time and space to do that, you can actually attempt it. If you even feel at the beginning like, oh, it's not going to be anything anyway, I'm super nihilistic, whatever, then you don't even try, you don't even start. So that would be my explanation, I think, for why Bitcoin is hope. It gives you a certain positive outlook on the future, not by disregarding the natural anxiety you have, but by actually enabling you to try something and take risk, again, in a conscious way, rather than that it's created outside of your.
Yeah, that's a really great line. I should clip that and use that as the promo for this video. I You mentioned a few things in there that I really love and I wanted to touch on. The first is this idea of low time preference, right? And you seem to have a very optimistic, a very kind of happy outlook on life, which I love and I really, really admire. So this idea of low time preference, choosing to pick long-term truth over, this short-term gain or all the noise that's going on. How does that show up for you personally, maybe away from money and away from Bitcoin, but how you view other things in the world?
Yeah, the main thing I'm thinking about is just having children, for example, right? Like I have a baby at home now, and another older child, and like I have, uh, people in my generation, at my age or a bit younger, they get to that point. Even by the way, 40 years ago, people would have children at your age, right? I mean, that also moved by 10, 15 years or something in general, right? Um, I think the main thing, the thing that I find the most horrible about fiat money, again, is that it is a human construct, right? Fiat money is designed, again, it's not something that we organically ended up with and being like, oh yeah, no, that is the money, right? So fiat money is designed. The money by decree by a government, of which a central bank dictates the value, is a created system. And so the people in my generation, they are at the point where they have big life choices, right? Like career wise, or where they live, or they want to get married or have kids, etc. Like the settle down era, basically. And I sometimes lurk on like the millennials subreddit. Like I just want to read what are people thinking, what are they discussing, and all these things. And there's also a lot of nihilism there. And when I read that, I feel like I don't feel any of these things. So I'm very blessed in that sense that I realize that I don't have these things. And I think partially I don't know, I'm lucky with a certain brain or how I'm wired or whatever. But I think a big part is also adopting Bitcoin and experiencing what I just explained is okay, there is uncertainty towards the future. I'm trying all these different things myself. And when you have a child, your life instantly becomes more uh, complex or difficult. You have to think about more stuff. You have to protect them. So that's the consequence of a choice you make of, for example, having a child, right? But with Bitcoin, I feel like what I just explained, I can make more conscious decisions. Although those decisions might eventually give me certain problems or challenges along the way, like that is with any decision. Like if you make the decision, I'm not going to do anything, you experience problems as well, right? So doing nothing is also a decision, and having, and that has its own consequences as well. But the children part, right? Like, so for example, on that subreddit, there's quite some talk also about that. And I always heard that, right? Like people are like, oh yeah, no, I don't want to have children because I think like either I don't have the money or the world is fucked up, etc. And I don't want to do that. And that always really intrigued me because I felt like, okay, there is something that is, you have this innate urge for to make children, that's biological, like that is all coded inside of us, and you are not following that because of something that other people created, right? That never really I don't know, that always struck something with me. And then at one point I had a conversation with a guy who was a CTO of a company, uh, and I thought he was smart and educated, and I thought he would know about Bitcoin, etc. And he knew I was into Bitcoin. And at one point, when I was at this company, we had lunch and we talked about this. And I said, okay, he asked something about Bitcoin. We talked about it, and I said, well, it seems like you understand all of these things, as to why Bitcoin exists and the problem with the money printing and all these things. And I said, so why aren't you into it? And he's like, yeah, I don't know, because I still think it can fill or whatever. And then I said, okay, but don't you have any children? I didn't know if he had children or not, right? And before that, again, we talked about just how the money printing was the problem of everything, and everything we talked about basically. And so he understood that was the case, right? And so I said, so you don't have any children? Like, how, I think children force you to think about the future, right? So I said, do you have any children? No, no, no. And then I said, okay, maybe a personal question, but is that also because of this? And he's like, yeah, I just want to focus on, my girlfriend, my parents, and whatever. And this is why we don't have children. And that really hit me. That was like the first time I had a conversation with someone that I deemed, above intelligent and knowledgeable and whatever, who said that. And yeah, I think that is just the worst thing. It's the worst thing that the people that actually think or think they think are incentivized to not do it because there is this man-made technology that is fundamentally flawed that totally blocks them, their whole spirit, everything to follow that. And that, I don't know, that is like the most horrible thing I can come up with what I see of the money. Is like, how is that acceptable just on a human level, right? Like, why are we okay with that if that actually is happening? Even if it's like 10 people, I would say, it should be a signal that this technology of money is not something that serves us as a whole. And so, um, yeah, I think that is the thing that stuck with me most. And everything else, from the quality of the buildings, of the products, or I think that is all below. But yeah, if you're lied to about how money works, what else isn't real, And I think when you go down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, you can also have these little side quests to other um, topics, because yeah, whoever controls the money controls the world, obviously, right? If money is the most important technology in the world, and all the incentives are aligned with the quality of the money, well, if you control the money, you control the incentives, right? I think that is all very basic and non conspiratorial and whatever, like that I don't know, that just makes rational sense to me. Um, so who controls the money, or who controls the quality of the money, is, I think, um, an age old thing, right? I mean, we saw it with the Romans. You have all these fun examples of um, um, being in charge of the usury or the creation of the money and the coin clipping and all these things. And so that is nothing new. But in some way, in today's age, people are like, no, we outgrew that, right? Like, no, that doesn't happen. And I think that's also why people don't want to see Bitcoin in that sense. Again, a possible solution to the problem, right? If people think there's another solution, that's fine. We think this is the solution. Um, it's kind of ignorant, and in one side it also kind of scares me that people have lost that plot, right? That also this, like, people think it's funny to say, like, oh yeah, a bread was like 20 cents 50 years ago, and now it's like 4 money units in whatever currency you have. Yeah, haha. I'm like, no, like, why is that fun? How is that funny? And so people are like surface level thinkers, and I think a lot of people are, because if you just go like a little bit below the surface, you already see that a lot of stuff is manufactured, again, not to your benefit. And so, yeah, then we go back to the beginning of this conversation. Like, yeah, okay, do I want to accept that or not? But yeah, once you understand that the quality of the money basically dictates the quality of the incentives, then you can start at least painting a picture of how you think the world works and why it looks today, how it looks today. And if you don't see that, you just point towards greedy people or greedy corporations or red or blue or left, right, whatever. And then you don't really understand what is going on. So even people that work, are big bosses in TradFi or at a central bank or whatever, yes, they also might not understand how money works. And that is such a scary thought. I think that was also a big motivator for me. Okay, then I'd rather take a chance on myself than on another person that also has an ego and desires and issues and whatever. I'd rather bet on myself. And also that, I would say, is a positive thing, but again, also on a daily basis almost gives you a new challenge, right? But again, if you don't do it, you have other challenges. So um I think this is kind of, in general, perhaps became my philosophy on life, is that, well, you have to do something, right? You always have to do something. You make your own choices, and even when you're young, and that gives me a lot of hope, is like seeing people like you, like you're 21, 23 too.
I'm 19.
19. Wow. I mean, when I was 19, I was not thinking like this. So bless you. Like, I think that is amazing, that can actually, that you can actually do that today with all the information that you can gather and dissect and think for yourself. Like, that was way different when I was 19, right? And so that gives me a lot of hope that you can also see that. And again, that gives me yeah, like, if it gives me hope for the future that younger generations are doing this, right? Like, this is why I think Bitcoin is also so beautiful and so powerful, is that it doesn't really matter where you come from, or your background, age, religion, skin color, what all that shit doesn't really matter, just like it doesn't matter on the internet, by the way. That's back to the original idea of a money for the internet. Like, on the internet, everyone is the same. There is no discrimination in that sense, on the internet, but there is a discrimination with the money, right? And if, back to the mirror example, Bitcoin is just way better to explain than fiat money, right? And if you're younger and you start looking for information, and you can get that from different people, again, with different backgrounds and ages and whatever, that end up on the same conclusion, that is a signal. And if you can see that signal and take that for what it is, then reflect on it, think about it, and that's cognitively, but also, yeah, like, develop yourself. I think, like you're doing also with this, then there is no, you cannot look away from what you found, right? And that's what I do love about the younger generations, that the people that are at that point, they also decide to do something about it. And there's this is the best time to do something about it. Like, you have all the tools at your fingertips, you know how to talk to your generation, right? Like, and this is also the way how information currently spreads. So yeah, I think that is also amazing, and that gives a lot of I think that helps my conviction to see all these different kinds of people from your age to like 70-year-olds, right? That get to the same conclusion. That is amazing. That means there is something there that is interesting, has value, gives certain people a certain perspective towards the future. Why should you spend time on this? And I spend time on this because I think this is the most important thing that anyone should learn. And I think you would agree. And that is why I said to you before we started recording, you doing this is the entire signal. That is the thing. Why is Nikki at 19 spending time on Bitcoin? And I think that's undeniable rather than why is XYZ who's 19 on OF. There's a very big difference there. So yeah, I just think that's really cool.
Thank you. And you know what? I think the best thing about Bitcoin is as you said, it's people from my age to even younger. I mean, I saw a video 2 days ago about a 9-year-old who was talking about Bitcoin. Someone who's 9 years old, right? That's insane to, as you said, 70 plus. And it really builds community. I mean, Bitcoiners are some of the best people out there because of just the values they hold, right? The fact that they, as you do, you view the world with so much excitement for the future and so much, like, as you said, we all have to do something. So let's do something. Let's make the decision to do something and fix the money, fix the world, as Bitcoiners like to say. So let's zoom out then, saying let's look at a world where Bitcoin has won and it's become the money that the next generation, Gen Beta, or as Robin said a few episodes ago, Generation Bitcoin, they grow up with this money. What kind of world and what kind of people do you think that that's going to produce?
Yeah, so I think that when we get there, right, and I think there's a step before that. So what does that look like? Today, actually, I have a podcast that's going out with Jordi Visser, and he talks a lot about like the convergence of AI and Bitcoin and what is value in the future. And I honestly think that AI is an amazing technological progression in the sense that it will accelerate what Jeff Booth, for example, talks about, the deflationary force of innovation. So if you agree that when you hear, sidestep, when you hear Joe Rogan, I love Joe Rogan, he talks about like, what is the purpose of humans, right? Like the bees have a purpose, the ants have a purpose, right? Like they do something in their life. That is what they do. Like, what is that for humans? And he always said, like, yeah, I think the what people do is innovate and progress, create efficiency, and yeah, because we're basically lazy, we want everything to be more productive in a sense, right? So more output through less input, basically. So just progression. And I always love that. I think like that is very true. And so this is also what Jeff Booth talks about, right? Okay, if there's always progression, there's always innovation, then eventually innovation is a deflationary force, which means, the computer in this phone is 100,000 times, I don't even know how many times more powerful than the first computer. And it's infinitely cheaper, even at, $1,000, whatever, than the millions of dollars that, this computer in a container cost before. And so that is how you can see it. Like, okay, something new starts here. That's hard to make. It's very expensive, not accessible to a lot of people. And slowly but surely, if it has value, by the way, right? If there's value that comes from that, it slowly becomes, even the creation of this thing becomes more efficient, right? Prices go down and therefore it's more accessible to everyone. That's why we can now talk in real time on the internet with amazing microphones that would perhaps be, top of the line 40 years ago, whatever. So if you agree that that is what is happening, then I think the thing you have to see is that we are not there yet. We are not at the point where, I don't know if you know the Jetsons, or like the people that had these predictions about the future, or these TV shows about the future with the flying cars and stuff like that. That's also a meme, right? Like we were promised flying cars. That's the people in the 1920s that said, in 100 years or at the year 2000, there's going to be flying cars, etc. Like that was from their perspective, that was possible, but we're not there, and the bread is more expensive than the bread was before, although we arguably became better, I would say, in making bread. If the technological progression of making bread, that doesn't stand still either. So why are things better technologically, but they are more expensive, right? So technological deflation, but you have the fiat money inflation. So you are pricing the deflationary technology with inflationary money. Does that make sense? So it should go down, but it's actually going up, right? Again, if we look at the bread or an apple, why is an apple more expensive than 50 years ago? Like, does it take more energy from the sun to grow the apple? No, that doesn't make sense. So it's the units that you use to pay for it. So that is the current problem, right? And everything we talked about, people are not incentivized to create, or even to create time and space to think about what they want to create, to think about, why am I here? What are my gifts? What are my challenges? Like all these things that um, I think back in the day people did more, right? That's why I think it's a spiritual thing, is like, because you are stuck in the physical world and you have to be on this treadmill to earn all these units that are, on this side, that are flying out on the other side. You don't have the time and space to even build yourself, or work on yourself. So in the future, if we actually value deflation with a deflationary money, then that will actually accelerate each other, right? So like AI will accelerate Bitcoin, and Bitcoin will accelerate AI, and yeah, and there's so on. And so if we eventually value everything in the world in Bitcoin, and we know that Bitcoin is the hardest, most scarce money to ever exist, and we know, as we talked about, that you have to actually deliver real value in order for other people to part ways with, the best money to ever exist. That is when we actually get, I would say, to real capitalism, in a sense that if you have a free market with that hard money, you and I can both try to make a cookie shop, whatever. And if my cookies suck and your cookies are amazing, then everyone goes to your cookie store and I have to close my cookie store and I can think about something else. But because I use Bitcoin as my money that appreciates over time in terms of spending power, I can actually fail at this cookie store. Does that make sense? And that, I think, is amazing, because you learn the most by failing, right? So what I hope, or what I think is the future, is that people become a lot more entrepreneurial, basically back to almost the barter days, in a sense, right? Like, I have to create something of value to barter with you. And that, I think, is eventually where you would want to go, because then art also becomes valuable. Just someone creating something beautiful in a public space becomes valuable, and people would want to spend money on it, because then this person is incentivized to actually create something beautiful, for which I get value in return just by seeing it, for example. And so I think when we live on a Bitcoin standard, people are incentivized to think about what they would want to create in the world, what they are good at, what they have to work on, like this entire personal journey, basically. And they are invited to make conscious decisions at no more, like, without increased risk. So now, today, if I want to make conscious decisions about what to do with my life, maybe I have to quit the stupid job that I'm working at. But if I don't have any money, I'm not going to stop the job, right? And then I'm distracted with this fucking bullshit job that no one ever cares about. Or, like, that's why people are stuck. And so if you can actually have the time and space to work on yourself, to figure out, okay, do I want to, make art, or do a cookie store, or become a doctor or a musician, or whatever you want to do, because I would say everyone has a certain value to bring to the world. People actually get the opportunity to figure out by doing, and having the option to fail one or multiple times, to eventually figure out what their thing is that they have to, or could bring to the world. Um, that would be amazing. How amazing would that be? Where everyone is just trying stuff and there's new stuff. Like, that would actually boost innovation, in my mind, because you can actually try and fail. And when you look back at all the innovations in the world, they came from a lot of failures from the people before them, right? It's not that the people that innovations were like, oh, this the first thought ever anyone ever had in the world about this thing. Yeah, that became the innovation. No, it's always built on what certain people did before you, and especially on what they failed at, what didn't work, right? And yeah, so I think about the world like that. I hope that would be a very, like, welcoming world for anyone who's born, right? That would also take away the whole anxiety about having children or whatever. That would actually make you very um, enthusiastic about having children. Like, what are they going to bring, right? How can they contribute to the world? And so that, I think, is something I'm probably not going to see in my lifetime, but maybe for my children or my grandchildren. And just that is amazing. Like, even that gives you a certain purpose beyond your lifetime, and that, um, I think, for me, is very motivational. Yeah.
I mean, I feel inspired just listening to that, and I hope that that's something that I get to see in my lifetime, and that's something that, you get to see as well. I've tried to keep up this theme of entrepreneurship, of innovation, because I really do think that that's where Gen Z can see a future, especially because of all the uncertainty going on. But whenever we have new technologies, whenever we have uncertainty and change, we also have room for more opportunity, right? We've seen that with Y2K, with the internet bubble, and we saw that with, the invention of the wheel and the Industrial Revolution, the assembly line. Like, you can go back. Probably some people say that, the greatest thing ever was the invention of sliced bread. So it
Yeah.
all of these little inventions that we have, all of these new technologies, they really just create opportunity. They create room for more people to become entrepreneurs, and I'm really glad that we were able to touch on that and look at the kind of people that world is going to foster, because it's an amazing thing, and it's probably the only thing that provides hope to me as someone who is Gen Z, who is studying for a degree, and as every day goes by, is feeling like, hey, maybe my chosen career path, isn't the career path that's going to work for me anymore. So, yeah, I mean, Bitcoin,
Yeah,
man,
can
it
I add
just
one thing? Can I add one thing? I also think in that future, because not everyone would want to be, for example, entrepreneurial. I think you are motivated to do that, but that's okay, right? Like, just like in a bee colony, there's worker bees. There's people that are super fine with just doing a simple thing. Like, there are people that have simple jobs or simple functions in society that are super happy, right? Of which we would say, like, I wouldn't really want to do that. But then there's other people that do that. And I think in that future, we would also be more grateful, and these people would also be compensated way more than they are today, if that makes sense, right? Because they create a certain base layer on which all the other people that don't want to do that stuff can actually create or fantasize or think about whatever, open their mind. Does that make sense, right? So I think it would eventually also, and I think that's an important word in nowadays, right? Um, be a more equal world, in the sense that the people that create this fundamental service of clean streets and nice parks and clean water and whatever, um, are not less, or we are not more, or whatever, but that they are valued in the correct way for their function in this society, if that makes sense. Because eventually it also comes back to them, right? Like, if there are people that have time and space to create more effective whatever, or beautiful designs for or whatever, it all comes back, right? And so everyone has their role in creating a great society. And eventually, I do think it is very basic, right? Like, I know some people that have been in politics here, and also local politics. Like, you want good education, you want a clean environment, a green environment, a healthy environment, right? Like, a place where the kids can, like, it's not that difficult. You want that people uh feel safe, have a roof over their head, right? That they can move along a country, whether it's public transport or car or whatever. Like, it is all quite basic, in my opinion, but it is all distorted eventually, I would say, base layer, because of the money. But imagine you can get there where, like, each person is valued in the same way for their contribution to society in whatever way, right? Even if you're, I don't know, from a poet to a garbage man to someone who creates a park, to, you know what I mean? Like, it is to a swim teacher or whatever. Like, eventually, I don't think it's about what you do or the title you have, but more about the value that you give, and that we are also aware again of what that actual value is. if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially I think that's a great message for Gen Z because as a generation we care a lot about equality. We care a lot about social justice, to fixing the wage gap and the income inequality, the increasing amount of billionaires and how the middle class is just getting absolutely screwed over with, the obviously inflation happening and the US dollar just becoming more and more weak. So I really do think, that's a great point to touch on. And with that, just to kind of close things out, what is your message to Gen Z who might be listening to this and might be thinking about Bitcoin?
Say that when you see that everything is downstream from the money, right? Everything that is broken in the world or you would want to fix, like any of these things that you just mentioned, they all come from this quality of the money. They all come from the incentives that people have. And you can think, if I was in XYZ position, I would never do that. But you have to realize that that is nonsense. You would also follow your incentive to take care of yourself first, right? I'd rather for you to die than me to die any day, right? And that is just how it is. And so if I am part of a certain system and I'm incentivized to behave in a certain way because that is what helps me in my individual prosperity, I'm going to do it. And you have to be honest about that, right? And so even when you talk about eroding of the middle class or the billionaires or whatever, people are just playing the game. So what should you do? You should leave the game. You should take away energy from that game. Join this other game, again, for lack of a better word. But this other money system that is trustless in a sense is ultimately transparent. And it's trustless because I don't have to trust that you follow the rules, right? That Nikki follows the rules because I know that you can only gain value from using this money system when you follow the rules. So this is literally like, a better world starts with you. That is Bitcoin, honestly, right? So take your energy from the parasitic, non-productive fiat money system and put it in the altruistic, value creating, builder incentivizing, decentralized, trustless, global, instant, a-religious, apolitical money system that is Bitcoin. And when you start doing that, when you just move away, you will see that and tell other people. So again, happy you started a podcast. Tell other people like you have to take energy away from the money. That is it. And it's so stupidly simple that people don't understand that. So everything that is broken in the world that you would want to fix comes from the fundamentally flawed money that you're forced to use. There's an option for you to get out of that, and that is called Bitcoin.
Thanks for that, Bram. And if you're listening to this, um, Bitcoin, as you said, right? It's probably objectively the best kind of money that you can have. It's super sound, it's fair, it's altruistic. It's how you fix the world. You fix the money, you fix the world. That's basically it. So my thing to you now is to the listeners watching this is if you are still questioning Bitcoin, if you still, have doubts about, its price go up, it's volatile, everything, put all of that aside for the second and look within yourself. Look at how you view money. Look at what you use money for. Look at what philosophically money means to you. Because as Bram said earlier in this episode, so many of us are unable to just define what money means to us. And I think that's truly the root place to start. So, Bram, last question, because I know I've kept you going for way past our scheduled time, and I like to ask everyone this when they come on. If there is one book or, resource, podcast, person to listen to for those starting out with Bitcoin, who would you recommend?
Well, you mentioned "What's the Problem" by Joe Bryan, right? Like that's a video that people search "What's the Problem Bitcoin," then they will find that video. I think it's 40 minutes. To be honest, I think it is very hard to see everything that we talked about without actually understanding the problem. And I think that video is probably the best video that explains. It's 39 minutes, and only the last 5 minutes are about Bitcoin. it just explains the system that you're in today. Again, how a lot of problems that everyone is aware of and they see in the world actually comes from the opportunity that the people in charge have to create more money units, and then it shows how everything is downstream from creating more of these money units. And so I think that is just a factually correct video, and it's not too long, right? I mean, 40 minutes, 2025 sounds long. But I think that will probably get you to this first stepping stone that I talked about. Like, okay, this was explained correctly. Now, what do I think of that? Right. And that is your first step, because if you don't understand or see or think there's currently a problem with money, then learning about Bitcoin doesn't really make sense. So that's the video I would suggest. And there's another video which is called "Broken Money" by Lynn Alden, which is 30 minutes. So I'm trying to keep it short, which I think also explains it perfectly from a bit deeper level, I would say. So I would suggest that's a great follow up video. And actually, those two videos are also on a free website I made called Start with Bitcoin, where I put 6 or 9 videos on that I think should just be the first for you to watch. But yeah, just these, little over an hour. These two, I would say, are probably the best place to start.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to put links. I'm going to put cards to both What's the Problem and Broken Money, as well as Start with Bitcoin, because I think that's a great place to start. If you're looking 6 to 9 videos, perfect. And definitely go check out Bram over at his podcast. He has amazing conversations, and I'm really looking forward to the one that, you're going to put out later today on Bitcoin and AI, because those are like my areas of interest to a T. So I'm going to add links to his podcast. And Bram, for anyone that's listening, if they have any questions or anything they want to talk about, is there a way that they can reach you?
Yeah, I'm mainly active on X, so that's Bramk, Bramk. And yeah, I think I'm quite. I try to be responsive there. So if you have any questions, just reach out there. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, big thank you to Bram for coming on and peeling all of this back with me. I really had a great time, and I cannot thank you enough for coming on. And everyone else, I will see you next week. Until then, stay curious, stay skeptical, and stay orange pilled. I'm your host, Nikki, and I will see you next time.